Hi folks, welcome to another episode of Methanol Madness. No racing at Ruapuna last week, but there was a New Zealand TQ title happening at Nelson. AJ, welcome into the show, mate. We'll talk about the TQs later on, but you've got your War of the Wings series starting up this Saturday at the track.
Yeah, round one hydraulic War of the Wings, so exciting, 20 cars, and boy, she's stacked from top to bottom with talent.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be exciting. Those two American boys are here and some of the very best sprint car drivers from the South Island. Louise, you went up to Nelson to watch the New Zealand TQ title. Ethan, your brother, was racing. There was some good racing there, but a few challenges as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably not the ideal weekend for a lot of drivers, but everyone had a lot of fun, and it's always good when you can go away and have good weather and enjoy everyone's company.
Well, to get things started, of course, it's Crash of the Week, brought to us by Elite Re-Roofing, Mike Bell and his roofing crew. And Louise, we look at Alicia Hill going for a wild ride here on the second day of the title.
Yeah, very unfortunate for Alicia. Obviously a massive crowd favourite there as the local girl, kind of wanting to bring it home and bring home some good results, but super tricky starting off the back of these heat races that are absolutely stacked. Tried to make something work there along the top side of that racetrack and unfortunately tagged the wall, and then another competitor kind of ended that for her.
Yeah, Vaughan Smith from Wellington, just the innocent party there, and we'll get one last view of it. Alicia going in pretty hot there. She's run out of drive, and that car sustained some pretty big damage. Well, with no racing at Ruapuna, our Value Cars Warehouse review focuses on the New Zealand TQ title, and 47 cars registered for the two-day event in Nelson. NZ1, 2 and 3 were in attendance, as well as some of our drivers from Ruapuna Speedway. Louise, what was your take on the event? Give us the results first, and then perhaps we might look at some of the performances of our local drivers.
Yeah, it was a big weekend, obviously, all leading to that final night there where we saw Jeremy Webb take home his 5th New Zealand title, which is an achievement in itself, let alone, how he got there. Collecting those points over those 2 nights was so important, and he was so consistent and so calculated. 2NZ went to Aaron Humble, obviously disappointing to drop a number, but still a great race nonetheless, and some of those restarts there at the very beginning of that feature didn't really help him there as Jeremy got the jump on that last restart. And then third place went to Ryan Baker. Unfortunately, Terence Durrell, who was our current 3NZ, was really trying to get that position there, but Ryan came home third.
Yeah, there was certainly some dramas within dramas watching the New Zealand TQ title. And as you said before, Jeremy Webb, an outstanding performance, unbelievable, 5 TQ titles now, and a staggering performance when you look at it in the context of history. As you said, Aaron Humble did have the jump on Jeremy Webb in that final, but he got very unlucky with 2 big crashes restarting the TQ final. And on that third restart, it was Jeremy that really got the jump and cleared out. So a very good performance by Jeremy Webb. Some of our local drivers that did pretty well, Louise, Dylan Forsey.
Yeah, really stoked for Dylan. Obviously, getting the C back on the car this year after registering to Auckland last year, it was great for him to kind of have some success at a title, especially after his big crash at Miami earlier this year. But one of our highest qualifiers behind Jeremy Webb, of course, qualified 4th for the feature, but unfortunately was involved in that second crash that you spoke about earlier, right off the start of that feature. So very disappointing for Dylan, but still a great result nonetheless to even make it that far.
Yeah, disappointing result for Dylan. He's a real professional driver and approaches it exactly the right way you need to for a New Zealand title. Got himself qualified, and he was desperately upset with his performance in that final, but Dylan, you certainly put a pretty good title together. Ethan, your brother, Louise, he had a crash later in the event, but he must have enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, definitely. It's one that teaches you a lot, and you learn so much racing against guys from all over the country, and especially such a large field. Even the heat races with 16 cars in them is not too unfamiliar. Obviously, we've got a lot of cars here at Ruapuna as well, but just the calibre of the guys and girls that you're racing against is crazy at those New Zealand titles. So very unlucky to have that crash after the checkers on the last heat race on Friday night. Rebounded to come back on Saturday again, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure Ethan will be participating in next year's New Zealand title as well. Ben Morgan, one of the favoured runners from Christchurch, how did he do?
Yeah, he also had a bit of bad luck there. There was one heat race where Dylan Bensman's chain actually came off, and with Ben nowhere to go, he ended up riding his wheel and flipping and landing on the infield. So definitely not what Ben wanted. Obviously, you've got to be really consistent to keep those points up. But he still came home and rallied to a 10th place finish, which was our highest finish behind Jeremy Webb for a C car. So that was another great result for the Morgan team.
Yeah, good stuff. And our two ladies of TQ driving, Jess Morris and Kimberly Yeatman, what were your thoughts on their performances?
Yeah, they also had an outstanding weekend. I think that they definitely deserve to be very proud of themselves. Kimberly actually came home second in one of the last chance races, but unfortunately was disqualified due to a protest after the race. And I know she was super disappointed, as she rightfully should be. Obviously, she raced really hard to get to that position and put on a good show as well, but unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be. And Jess also put on a really good show in her heat, in her B main, as well. Just missing out on that transfer spot by milliseconds. So very disappointing again, obviously so close to making it, but definitely enjoyed watching the feature as well.
Yeah, certainly plenty of drama. The track was very tricky, which we'll talk about shortly. But AJ, New Zealand titles really bring it out in drivers, don't they? There's often a fair bit of carnage in New Zealand titles because no one's really giving up their positions. And this was another one that had a few accidents as well.
It is, and look, traditionally the New Zealand TQ Championship, there's always an element of controversy about it. I've been to dozens of the things through the years, and there's always a little bit of drama and so on. Firstly, you've absolutely got to tip your hat towards Jeremy Webb. 5 New Zealand championships is an astonishing result, and he was brought up around it. His father Dick, an exceedingly successful TQ racer, and so on. Sometimes I get a feeling that when Jeremy's at Ruapuna, he goes out, wins, and he's just doing it that, he doesn't engage with the crowd and he doesn't celebrate and so on. And I'd really love to see that come out, because we could go from watching a guy who's one hell of a good racer to someone who the fans appreciate not only for what he does on the track, but also the acknowledgement and so on. And I'm sure, like his old man Dick was the most engaging person you could meet on this earth. And I'm sure that Jeremy at some point, he may just say, I'm going to celebrate this, because when I win something elsewhere, I really do celebrate. But at Ruapuna, I've probably won that much that it's just another race win. I hope that's not the case. But absolutely, this guy is a machine. Still a wee way behind Chris Beach in TQ feature wins at Ruapuna, but we are seeing one of the very best.
Yeah, I think you're right with Jeremy Webb. He's more of the shy retiring type when it comes to Ruapuna, but he's certainly a real champion and deserves every accolade that he gets. A great performance by you, Jeremy. We've seen Dick there in the infield really celebrating on the night. Apparently the beers were flowing as well, and you guys really got into it in Nelson, which in some ways is your adopted home anyway. So congratulations again. Perhaps we should talk about the track though, AJ. A tricky track. It was pretty slick and difficult to make passes.
Yes, I think that they would sit back and review this. Nelson, it's a bit like Cromwell, gets very, very hot. A bit like Christchurch when it's a nor'wester. When we have a big show, we do not want a roaring nor'wester coming across the plains, because it's heat, its energy sapping, it takes moisture out of the racetracks and so on. And Nelson are a bit like Ruapuna. There's so many restrictions in how they can operate, with number of race meetings that they can have 2 nights. The number of 2 night shows very restricted. They can't run long weekends and things like that. And so all of a sudden they do have to start stacking things together so that a big TQ show, it was inevitable that they may have sat there and said, okay, we've got these other things to run, so let's put this in on top of it. And it reminds me of the Sprint Car Nationals at Palmerston North, when all the sprint car people are going, what the hell are they running super stocks for? Wearing the hat of a promoting type person, you'd say, great job, Palmerston North. You ensured that there was a big crowd there for the sprint cars, because to be quite honest, I don't think they were that interested in the sprint cars. Nelson may well have taken the same approach, where TQs, probably at any track around New Zealand, whilst the racing is exceptionally high, it's not something that is going to ensure a sell-out crowd, and I don't know why, because the racing is so darn good. But they may well have taken the approach, we have got a chance of making this really something by also having, a stock car event and the 2 night sprint car show. Inevitably, I think that it was going to take a toll on the racetrack, however, whatever happened.
Yeah, I think you're right, and what you're really referring to is running the sprint cars and other classes while the New Zealand title was being competed for. Very easy to criticise, but we don't want to criticise too much. It's just a modern day problem for promoting of speedways these days. How do you ensure a crowd attends the New Zealand TQ title, is what you were talking about, AJ. Louise, you're a spectator from the sideline. How did it look to you?
Yeah, it was definitely a jam-packed night. Obviously, you want to cram as much as you can while you've kind of got the attention of the North Islanders and people from all over that are really tuning in because it is a national title. It was definitely hectic. Obviously, as an avid sprint car fan and an avid TQ fan, you want to be there for both and you want to enjoy both. Unfortunately, obviously, track conditions played a big part in the TQs having a bit of a struggle there. Obviously, it's safe to say that the sprint cars weren't ever going to help that. Obviously with time trials and the unique format that they ran for the Paddy North race as well. Obviously really great races, really important events on the calendar, but definitely made it a little bit challenging as a spectator to kind of know where the gain was coming from as to which class was going to benefit the most from that track, and I don't think it was the TQs.
Yeah, and you could probably make an argument for any part of those, any one of those points, and certainly from the the TQ drivers, it was disappointing to have sprint cars there burning up their track, giving them minimal grip and a challenging racing surface, let's say. Nevertheless, the conditions were the same for everybody, and you had to adapt and change. And so it certainly brought out a bit of criticism, AJ, but we can understand it, can't we? As promoters, we understand how difficult it is to get crowds to the track, and you're trying to do the best by competing factors.
Oh, absolutely, and it is not a criticism of Nelson. This here is putting on the table the real hard reality behind running race meetings. There are a number of tracks that are limited with how many race meetings they do. We still have people crying that we're not running every Saturday night between the middle of October right through to the end of April. The sport can no longer sustain that either from competitors or from spectators. They can't do that. The hard realities is you have to try and cram more into less, and sometimes there's an overflow, and the reality is actually a commercial one. It costs so much to open the gates of a speedway track. Now, insurance prices have gone up, like 500% in the last few years. It's a very, very expensive business, and all your effort can go out the window when a southerly roars through and wipes a whole lot out. It's a unique business. It's an industry that any sane person wouldn't invest 1 cent in. And, this is something that I think every track should just sit back and say, okay, now this is what has happened. We're faced with the same thing. What can we do best to minimise the impact on everything and everyone?
I think you're right, AJ. There are certainly some unique challenges for speedway promotion all over the country at the moment. Well, there were some other classes racing from Ruapuna at Nelson. The quarter midgets had some racing there. Louise, how did they go?
Yeah, another really big field. Obviously, I feel like I say that every week now, but it's a very common theme. We're pulling 20 cars basically wherever we go, which is fantastic and exactly where the class needs to be. Friday night saw us running round 2 of the Mike Rea Homes Nelson series, obviously home track for the sponsor, which was great to be able to put on a show for them. It was Colin Thompson winning the features on both Friday and Saturday night, so now he's got a 10-point lead over Jack in the series points, which was great. Obviously, Saturday night was just another feature for them, but still great to see Cohen now 3 for 3 feature wins in the last couple of weeks. Cohen, Lakin, Jackson, Conley Webley as well, they all put on great shows, so it was awesome to see those guys up in the results as well.
Yeah, Cohen Thompson, all the way from Greymouth, really putting his hand up to be the next contender to Jack Brownlee's for taking out feature wins. It is a good class, isn't it, AJ? We speak about it all the time. It's such a feeder class now, and with 20 competitors racing generally every week, it's actually quite a spectacle to watch.
It is, and one of the things about the quarter midgets is they are getting the variation in track surfaces. Back in the day, they'd do a couple of races before the show when the track was always going to be the same. Now they're learning and developing their craft on and off the racetrack. Sort of something a little bit heavier, and then working their way right through to the slickies, and they'll go over to Greymouth and race in the baking sun over there, and and they're getting such great opportunities, and the numbers are reflecting huge interest in it, and the talent pool is just amazing.
So the other class that was racing from Ruapuna at Nelson was the sprint cars, and we had the Paddy North Memorial and the Sunshine Classic. How were the results there, Louise?
Yeah, obviously, as we just spoke about before, it was a difficult track for the sprint cars as well, obviously very small and very slick, but they had about 10 of them show up, I believe, which was good numbers for going around Nelson. Obviously, it's a small track, you don't want too many of them. The Paddy North race was split into two 23-lap features, obviously in honour of Paddy's number 46. They ended up having to run the second half of that feature on Saturday, which was at the very beginning of the meeting for anyone that was watching the live stream. But they did that over points, I believe, so that saw Conor Rangi taking out the win there, Joel Myers Jr. second, and Jamie Duff in third place.
Yep.
And then to round out the night for the sprint cars, they ran their Sunshine Classic feature on Saturday night, where Joel Myers Jr. took the win there very convincingly. Lap traffic got a bit dicey at the end as Conor started to catch up, but Conor ultimately finished in second, with Max Guilford rallying home for a third place finish.
Yeah, good to see Max Guilford's on his trip down to the War of the Wings, stopping off at Nelson on the way. And very tricky conditions for the sprint cars. I think, to be honest, Joel Myers Jr. really forced his way through to get to the lead in the Sunshine Classic. He was the only guy that was capable of really passing. It was just too slick. It was like an ice skating rink racing those big wheels on the track. AJ, challenging times for that Sunshine Classic, but it is typically a pretty good race.
The first one in particular was an absolute ripper of a show, and that was a double-header weekend with the South Island Sprint Car Championship up there. Last couple of years I've struggled a little for big numbers of cars, but I actually go with Lou on this. 10, 12 cars around Nelson is one hell of a spectacle, especially when they were up there running against the wall, and it's a unique shape, and it's very, very fast. It's a great wee bull ring, and when Conor Rangi in particular really gets going, he is a spectacle, particularly up at Nelson.
Yeah, he certainly is one of the local boys there. And Louise, Brenham Crouch didn't have the greatest night. He tipped his car up. It was very gentle when he tipped it up, but challenging times for him on that very slick track.
Yeah, obviously not having the best of starts to his first meeting at what's technically his home track, obviously being registered to Nelson with the 75N. But yeah, I'm involved in that situation where Jaden Dodge kind of got around coming down that back straight there. Very unlucky, just wrong place, wrong time, kind of tipped it on its side there, but unfortunately didn't get a restart for that heat race.
Yeah, tricky times there for Brenham Crouch. I'm sure he'll look forwards to racing this Saturday at Ruapuna Speedway. Time for a break, folks, and on the back of that, we'll have dirt track news.
Welcome to Wellington's largest caravan and RV shop. CB Caravans and RV Centre look after repairs and maintenance, and they are leak specialists. CB Caravans and RV Centre import UK caravans. Need to sell? They can help. CB Caravans and RV Centre, your caravan solution. Catch up with Will and Wendy today. The family entertainment continues at the Racecourse Hotel and Motor Lodge Ruapuna Speedway this Saturday night with the Hydrolink Sprint Car War of the Wings. American hotshots Joel Myers Jr. and Brenham Crouch will be racing their 900 horsepower winged monsters around the track. And the TQs have their Rhinestone 17-lap memorial race. With high-octane action on the track and family fun all night, you don't want to miss this Saturday's racing at the Racecourse Hotel and Motor Lodge, Ruapuna Speedway. Gates open at 4:30 and the sprint car time trial starts at 5:30.
Time to move on to dirt track news brought to us by CB Caravans and RV Centre. First event we'll look at is the Bay of Plenty Sprint Car Championship, and Rodney Wood took out the championship in good style, taking out the feature race there. AJ, that was a pretty good race.
Yeah, how good. Rodney Wood, he's one of those guys, he's like a fine wine, and there's no slowing him up, and he puts in a lot of work behind the scenes at Bay Park with the racetrack, and that had been a bit of a problem child for a number of years. And then his son Cole, who we saw down here at the Sprint Car Nationals last year, really talented kid, and he came home in second place. And Keaton Dahm, what would you say? He just put in such a great drive through the field to finish in third.
Yeah, Keaton Dahm's drive was pretty spectacular, but another spectacular moment was a wheelie that Rodney Wood pulled down the straight, Louise. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely one of the longest ones I've probably ever seen, to be fair. Definitely so impressive to kind of keep that control and that speed going, obviously with no steering when your front wheels are up in the air. It's all up to you to just kind of keep cool, calm and collected, and that's exactly what he did, and didn't ruin his race or anyone else's race.
Well, not sure, Rodney, if you had it under control or not, mate, but it certainly looked pretty impressive to the crowd. At least 80 or 90 metres with the wheels up. Certainly one of the longest wheelies I've ever seen. Well, confirmation that the Midget Gold Cup is now happening at Ruapuna Speedway later in the season. That'll be part of our new Speed Week promotion, and that's good for the midgets there, AJ. I'm sure that's going to attract a lot of North Islanders.
I think it will do, and we've got a reputation for running a good show. We're getting a lot more exposure than we used to do, and the drivers generally have a whale of a time. It's towards the tail end of the season, so some teams it'll be we're going to park her up pretty much after this, but what a big boost it's going to be for the South Island. And the midgets, they're going to get another crack at them. The sprint cars, with the Gold Cup and the Goodie, it's going to be just an outstanding way to finish the season.
Absolutely, it's an enormous weekend, or a week of racing I should say, and of course that is on the 5th, 6th, 11th and 13th of April. So Methanol Madness Speed Week is what it's known as now. We've changed the name. We used to call it Sprint Week, but of course now incorporating the midgets, Methanol Madness Speed Week is the official name. Access Man New Zealand Midget Car title, we know it's on the 3rd and 4th of February. That's certainly going to be a great event, AJ. We speak about it every week. It'd be good to see if Glenn Jury can get his car up and running. We know he blew his motor up earlier in the season.
Absolutely hope so. Look, the freight world is just a cluster right now, and anyone trying to get parts, it's almost an impossibility. For God's sake, you can jump on a plane and be in the States in 12, 14 hours, but it seems as though some of these suppliers are still hanging on to the COVID world and so on. I was talking to Dave Kerr the other day, and he's been waiting 3 months for a set of inlet valves, and how do you plan around that? And so the Access Man guys, they'll be really just hanging on, hoping the bits arrive nice and soon, because it wouldn't be a big midget car event at Ruapuna without Glenn Jury.
Yeah, absolutely. Louise, some movement in the High Limit and World of Outlaws in international news. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, definitely a lot of movement going on there, with a lot of driver announcements coming out, and a lot of people forming some great opinions as well, obviously negative and positive, looking at both sides of things. So far, I'm sure a lot of people are probably thinking that the high limit racing schedule and the roster is probably looking a little bit more appealing in terms of having more drivers at the moment. I wouldn't really call that, it's probably a little bit too soon to call that, how it's going to end up, but they've got a lot of good drivers on their roster, including a lot of the young guns, including Brennan Crouch, who obviously we're going to see over the next couple of months here in Christchurch and around New Zealand. They've also got Rico, Zeb, Brad Sweet, obviously Kyle Larson running all their midweek shows as well, and Corey Day, who we've spoken about on the show as well. Got a lot of talent behind that. The wheel of those 2 sprint cars that he'll be running while he runs for Corsa Marshall, and also his 14 car that he's been running more regularly. So definitely a lot of drivers, still a lot to come. There's still a lot that haven't been announced yet, so it'll definitely be interesting and a space to watch over the next couple of months still.
Yeah, certainly a changing face of sprint car driving internationally. The World of Outlaws was absolutely the premium series to watch, and it's now changing with this high limit coming in. AJ, what are your views on this?
I think let's throw in the battle there is between Dirt Vision and Flow Racing, the major streaming businesses. There's one in each camp. Dirt Vision, obviously a part of the World of Outlaws empire, or the World Racing Group. The World of Outlaws have faced a number of challenges in their 40 or so seasons. It's not the first, it won't be the last, but what I'm sensing is that the high limits is very much driven out of California. It is the money of and profile of Brad Sweet and Kyle Larson that are pretty much driving this. And then when you start seeing the Rico Abrus of this world, and Corey Day, one of the young guys starting to come into it. So what I'm picking is that Californian swing that runs through sort of like late August, and that traditionally a lot of the outlaw teams say, oh, we can't be bothered driving out west, it's too far. I think that the Californian races at the likes of Chico and up in Skagit could be the events of the season, numbers-wise and so on. But the Outlaws, they've still got Donny Schatz in the camp, they've still got David Gravel. But the unfortunate thing is you end up with teams like Shark Racing. We talked to Tanner Holmes about Shark Racing the other week. Joey Allen's going to run high limits. Yeah, and his sparring partner, Logan Schuhart, he's going to be running the Outlaws. So there are splits in teams, obviously not so much in personnel, but or personalities, but more so in logistics. Teams will be doing sort of covering the country, so to speak. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, certainly a changing time in international sprint car racing, and it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. We all remember the Cavaliers years ago for the All Blacks, and what a miserable failure that was. but certainly it looks like there's plenty of potential in the high limit series, and I think the World of Outlaws is strong enough to hold on to itself for a number of years as well. Well, time to move on to the Value Cars Warehouse preview of our next meeting. That happens to be the Hydrolink War of the Wings, and a pretty good field here, AJ, over 20 runners.
Yeah, 20 entries, which is really, really good. Sort of some guys that have got a few laps under their belt this year, and welcome back to Lindsay Gilbert. Anyone who can remember back 3 or 4 seasons when Gilby got behind the wheel, it's stand clear. He'll add some venom to the field. He has been racing modified, so laps come naturally to the guy anyway. But yeah, again, there's probably 7 or 8 people there that can legitimately stamp their name down as being a real contender for this.
Yeah, Lindsay Gilbert, as you say, the 8N car registered to race at Nelson, but racing at Ruapuna. He was a one-man excitement machine when he was racing at Ruapuna many years ago. Louise, you may have taken a look at some of the drivers here. What are your thoughts on who could take this out?
Yeah, definitely a stacked field of sprint cars, which is a great way to start the War of the Wings, and it's awesome to see them all come together to compete in such an awesome series that's been going for such a long time, and it is a great supporter and a grower of the sprint car class in my opinion. But I think that the battle will probably come down to Jamie, Connor and Joel. I think any one of those 3 is obviously capable of winning a feature, and they've had some really good battles the last couple of weeks, and I know that Connor and Jamie are probably egging to knock Joel off that top step, but I'd also like to see Brenham obviously have a bit more luck and see if he can improve on his 3rd place at the last Ruapuna meeting.
Yeah, for those that were at our last meeting, it was the Joel Myers Jr. show, and he was absolutely dominant all night. My pick is Brenham Crouch. I think he's going to compose himself. He had a very tricky track up in Nelson, couldn't really make his way forwards, and I'm expecting good things out of Brenham. Matthew Levisage, hopefully he's got that car up and running, the 3NZ driver. Fingers crossed he can get running again. And Bailey Patterson. Bailey had a great run at the start of the season, really putting in some great laps. He's just a rookie this year. Had one meeting off last meeting at Ruapuna, but watch out for the 5C of Bailey Patterson. AJ, can you tell us about the format of the War of the Wings? How does it differ from other series?
Well, the Hydrolink War of the Wings, it starts off with time trials. Each car does 2 laps against the clock, and you really do get a feel for how a driver's going to perform with the time trials. It's over in about 15 minutes, and what that does, it seeds the drivers into their groups for the heats. So each driver gets 2 heats. It's split into 3 groups,
yep.
And 1 against 2, 3 against 1, 2 against 3 sort of thing. The top 6 drivers then draw to go into a 6-lap dash, and that determines the starting positions for the 30-lap feature race. So the foundation for the show is actually built from that time trial. It's a lot more important than people give it credit for. But let's also not forget Jaden Dodge and Mad Max Guilford. And probably a little side battle to keep an eye on would be between Jaden Dodge and Caleb Bourne. That's been simmering for a year or so now.
Yeah, it has. You're right, the Sheriff Jaden Dodge, he was probably the most outstanding local driver at our last meetings, putting slide jobs on. He's the only person to be able to get past Joel Myers Jr. as well. So certainly 77C Jaden Dodge, that's one to watch out for. And we know how good Mad Max is. He certainly doesn't mind bombing some of the corners there and putting slide jobs on all other drivers. And some good news out of Trent Way Racing. We've got Buddy Kofoid coming over to New Zealand this Christmas for the International Midget Series, and great to see Buddy Kofoid back in town. He'll be racing on the 26th at Waikaraka Park, the 28th of December at Bay Park Speedway, the 30th at Robertson Holden International Speedway, and back at Waikaraka Park on the 1st. So 4 opportunities to see the very best midget car driver from America, and Trent Way Racing bringing Buddy Kofoid over. Well, if you turn up the track on Saturday, it is our last meeting before Christmas, and you might be thinking, what's a good Christmas present for one of your Speedway mates? Got a wee bit of merchandise here which you can find at the Track Shack on the track itself. And these are the metal posters put together by AJ. He runs the Track Shack there. I think that would be a pretty good gift for anyone that's into their sprint car racing. And of course we've got the Ruapuna Speedway t-shirts. I like that logo, AJ. That's certainly one of the best ones I've seen for a long time. And if you're looking for some Christmas gifts, get yourself down to the Track Shack on Saturday. Okay, the other feature that's happening on the track on Saturday is the Ryan Stone Memorial. We've got 22 TQs backing up after the title. It's normally a pretty good race, this, AJ. Who's your selection?
There's no Jeremy Webb, no Ben Morgan, so that does open up the field to some extent. I'd probably be looking down the path of one of the Thompson boys, Tyler Warnock, maybe even young Ethan Smith, because they do start with the highest point scorer starting off the back, so they've got to work their way through the field. So some of those people that start in mid-pack or even in the front, they could be gone like robbers' dogs very, very easily.
Yeah, an interesting format, the Ryan Stone Memorial, the fastest qualifier off the back. That's how Speedway racing was many years ago. And certainly if you've had a bad night, you could find yourself somewhere close to the front. So it's certainly a good wee format. It's a great celebration of the great man himself, Ryan Stone. Louise, who's some of your selections?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of great cars entered in this field, especially, the week following the New Zealand title. It's great to still be able to pull a field of over 20 cars, which is fantastic, but only 17 cars make the feature. It's a 17-lap feature, so it's almost kind of like a bit of a dash to kind of even make the feature. But I think that there's plenty of people on this list that are more than capable, including Tyler. I think he'd be really after some redemption after last weekend, obviously his challenges that he came across in Nelson. Aaron Finlay, I'm sure, is looking to improve as well. There's countless ones. I'd also like to see Jamie Booth at least landed on the podium. I think that he deserves some results for how quick he's been going as of late.
Yeah, Jamie's been very fast this year. Just hasn't quite had the results that he's looking for, but certainly it's a fairly open field, and there'll be another feature happening on Saturday night. Well, folks, time to move on to our share and win competition. Of course, all you had to do was share this post over the last week or so, and we've had plenty of engagement as usual. Louise, who are the winners?
So our winners for this week's competition are Steph Miller, Hayley Hansen, Rachel Briggs, Gianna Wahoo, Jaden Temperley, Alma Lapuz Bennett, Margaret Malverd, Gary Blackler, Mark Bell and Sue Shirley.
Yeah, good stuff. And if you've won a ticket there, make sure you get yourself down to the public entrance. Just mention your name, take a bit of ID down there, and we'll see you and your family on the track. Well, folks, that's the last show for the year, and my thanks to AJ Batt, Louise Smith for their participation, and the countless number of guests that we've had on the show this year. It's been a hell of a ride. We'll be back on the 18th of January, just a couple of days before our next War of the Wings series happening at the Racecourse Hotel and Motor Lodge, Ruapuna Speedway. But until next time, keep your foot up it.